Good morning and a warm welcome to you. Now let's start off first with what is a landmark ruling by the French government authorizing the extradition of Francois Compaore, Francois Compaore, Burkina Faso's former younger brother to Burkina Faso's former president. He is implicated in the investigation into the 1998 assassination of a journalist. Francois Compaore is the younger brother to ousted Burkina Faso leader Blaise Compaoré. He served as the country's economic advisor to the president from 1989 to 2014. Francois was arrested at the Rosé airport in Paris in October 2017 in execution of an arrest warrant issued by his country, Burkina Faso. But to date, he has not been charged for the murder of the recognized investigative journalist Norbert Zongo in December 1998, even though he is accused and implicated in it. The 49-year-old journalist, author of several resounding investigations denouncing bad governance under the Compaoré regime, had been killed with 3 of his companions. We'll have more on this story for you in our subsequent bulletins. And now we go to the Central African Republic, CAR, where it is seemingly compensation time for victims of Congo's former rebel leader, JeanPierre Bemba, alleged war crimes carried out in the CAR's bush war of 2002 to 2004. Bridget.
And in total, more than 5,000 victims are seeking individualized reparations before the International Criminal Court for crimes committed in the Central African Republic between October 2002 and March 2003, and for which JeanPierre Bemba was convicted in June 2016 before being acquitted in 2018. The survivors of these attacks carried out by the men of the former vice president of the DRC have lost everything in this conflict. Their testimonies were compiled in a report published by the International Federation for Human Rights in June 2017. The NGO noted victims suffering from incurable after effects, trauma, and even contaminated by HIV, and calls on the ICC to guarantee access to free medical care for all victims until their full recovery. Berteng Bishikwabo, Program Officer at the ICC Fund in Bangui, now joins us for details. Good to have you on the program. Almost 20 years have passed since the event. When will the compensation for victims finally start?
Dans le cadre de l'assistance, on ne peut pas parler d'indemnisation.
Within the context of assistance, we cannot talk about compensation. We only talk about compensation when there is a judicial decision and a reparation decision. In the Bemba case, there was no decision granting reparation to the victims because Bemba was acquitted. And so, in this context, we cannot talk about compensation. We work within the framework of assistance, which is not a judicial mandate, because even if the person has not been convicted, when there is a case before the International Criminal Court, we can intervene within the framework of general assistance.
So what is the International Criminal Court, ICC, currently doing to assist these victims who have been waiting for several years now? What is the time frame for the launch of whatever assistance program it is going to be?
The Victims Trust Fund has launched a call for project proposals for civil society organizations that would be interested in working with the Victims Trust Fund. Since May 2019, we've been engaged in this process, and we hope that soon the process will be completed and we will be able to have organizations that will work in the process of assistance to the victims. So when we were doing the evaluations, and we had victims who were in a rather delicate situation, a situation that required urgent intervention, and at that time, while we were doing the evaluations, we tried to give assistance until we had a project that could address all the consequences of the harm suffered by the victims. So the Victims Trust Fund is launching a pilot program that will deal with all these urgent cases here in the city of Bangui, and the pilot program would take care of 200 victims who are in an emergency situation. And at the same time, the process of recruiting partners who implement the assistance projects in other areas will have to follow the normal course. We hope that By the second half of the year 2020, we will be able to have projects that are being implemented and that would respond to the needs of the victims in the Bemba case.
Et de répondre aux besoins des victimes dans l'affaire Bemba.
So what available means do you have to assist victims? How many have you identified so far?
Alors, les fonds profit des victimes pour devoir mettre en œuvre les projets d'assistance avaient
To implement the assistance projects, the Trust Fund for Victims had foreseen an amount of €1,250,000. There is 1 million under the general package and 250,000 euros under the pilot program here in the city of Bangui, which would deal exclusively with victims in emergency cases. So here in the Central African Republic and in the Bemba case, there are about 5,500 victims who had asked for reparation and who have 2 legal representatives. So we have started to evaluate the situation of these victims, and eventually we are at a number of 2,360 victims who have had their data updated. Because when we received the data on the victims, some of them were just about 10 years old or thereabouts. Whereas for us to have a program that meets the needs of the victims, we had to have well-updated data. So this is the process we are in, and at the same time, we are in the process of recruiting the partners who are going to implement the 2 programs, as I mentioned, the pilot and assistance program and the major assistance program here in the Central African Republic.
Ici en République centrafricaine.